Good morning, Thursday of December 2018, and you're listening to the Michael Hart Show. Actually, it's no longer the Michael Hart Show, believe it or not. After some consultation over the course of the last several days, we think we're going to rename this puppy. Not a whole lot of substantial changes, but thought about maybe naming it, and then there's that, with Michael Hart. Can't necessarily take all the credit for that. Had some good advice from a good friend, and so in the future, I think we're going to refer to it as, and then there's that, with Michael Hart on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. A lot to cover today, a lot of news over the course of the weekend. Of course, everybody's up to speed with the fact that George H.W. Bush passed away late last week. He will lie in state in the U.S. Capitol. Of course, Donald Trump will also attend the funeral. I spent pretty much the last, 48 hours or so going through my Instagram feed because everybody had an opinion on George Bush. And there are several people that I follow online, probably, 200 or 300 of them actually. And everybody out there was putting something on social media. So if you did not know that George Bush had passed away over the weekend, well, you must have been drunken in the gutter. But again, he did pass away this past week and will lie in state. Congressional leaders announced that an arrival ceremony is going to be held for the former president beginning at 4 o'clock. It's going to be Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. The public will then be invited to pay their respects from about 7:30 to about 7 a.m. on Wednesday. The statement said that the Bush family will provide additional details regarding arrangements beyond the ceremony at the Capitol, and as well as the burial, I believe, is going to be private in Texas. But it's going to be is it ever going to be a media circus? When someone lies in state in the Capitol Rotunda, the casket is typically placed in the center of the room, and the wooden platform used for actually Lincoln's funeral all the way back in 1865. Casket is draped with an American flag, and an honored guard stands vigil around the clock. The rotunda is usually permitted to file past the casket after formal and, family ceremonies. The last president to lie in state was Gerald Ford in late 2006 and early 2007. President Ronald Reagan lay in state in June 2004. However, the last two people to lie in state were not presidents. They would have been Daniel Inouye from Hawaii, and in 2012, of course, that would have been Senator John McCain this year. So a lot of formalities coming up with this thing, and so we're going to give you some insights on it over the course of the next couple of days as we continue to introduce new aspects to this program. And we do have the brand new website. Well, it's been up for a couple of days, but it's being added to almost every single day, and that is heartofamerica.net. We are coming up with a brand new podcast that's going to deal almost exclusively with history, American history, and the unknown America. So unknown American history, and then also the situational security show that we did last week was so well received that it is a go as well. And there might even be a fourth podcast. So basically, what we're going to do here is Heart of America is your destination for all the different downloads and live feeds. The shows are going to come on every single day at the same time. And you can tune in or you can download them later, because some of the content we're going to get into, particularly as it relates to situational security and history, of course, it's going to have a little longer shelf life than just talking about the news of the day. Because my longtime thought, I know for a fact that to understand the breaking news of the day, you have got to look through the prism of the past. I've known that for many, many, many years. A lot of things going on in the country around us today do have their underpinnings in the past. So we are going to rededicate ourselves and double down on that as well. On this day in history, a lot of things actually occurred, but there's one in particular that we're going to break down. And we're also going to take a look at the First Step Act. This is a bipartisan act for incarcerated folks, incarcerated Americans. A lot of folks on board with it on the left side of the aisle and the right side of the aisle. And frankly, it probably is something that needs to be dealt with. And so we're going to break down the First Step Act as well. Phones, and the time is right, is 929-477-3761, 929-477-3761. So let's take a real quick look at something in particular that occurred on this day, the 2nd of December in the year 1800. Kind of sounds boring, doesn't it? This is the kind of stuff you don't learn in school, though. Because you know what was, for all intent and purposes, born on this very day in the year 1800? Yep, that's right. For all intent and purposes, it was on this particular day in the United States of America that the two-party system was birthed. Yep. The 1800 presidential election, the Electoral College cast votes for president and vice president that resulted in a tie between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. A lot of people do not realize that back in the day, the Electoral College would, whoever won the Electoral College was president. Second place became vice president. So it was completely possible to have two politically diametrically opposed viewpoints occupying the executive branch. Thomas Jefferson called the election of 1800 the Revolution of 1800 because it marked the first time that power in America passed from one party to another. He promised to govern as he felt the founders intended, based on decentralized government and trust in the people to make the right decisions for themselves. Ever since, these have become known as the Jeffersonian principles. The election confirmed the emergence of the two-party system in American politics, a development that must have seemed pretty darn ironic to some Federalist and Democratic Republicans, writes historian Thomas Conley, quote, because of them, and they had believed that George Washington, that the appearance of parties would do more harm than good. Washington actually had, as you are well aware, commanded enough respect to engineer unanimous presidential victories in 1789 and 1792. But during the presidency of Washington's successor, John Adams, political factions were warring quite openly. Adams and the Federalists had led the nation into an undeclared naval war with France, and the process expressed an activist concept of government that Vice President Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans thought contradicted democratic principles. It's so interesting if you flash back to that time. It gives you, in my opinion, gives you so much more respect for the Constitution because, again, there seems to be this narrative that we've had in this country that the Constitution came to being by one party essentially overthrowing or bullying the other party. The Constitution of the United States of America is the byproduct of bipartisan efforts in a lot of regard. The original Bill of Rights had more than 10 particular amendments in it. So it's important to look at the framework of the past as we are continuing to try to figure out the framework of the present. Under Adams, there was deep dissatisfaction with the direction of the country and rising divisions. Where have we heard that before? Cries multiplied. In particular, there were regular confrontations with France over the revolutionary Paris government's searching of American ships and other abuses. At times, open conflict seemed likely. Again, you've got consternation and opposition within the parties. You've got wars going on abroad. You had French hysteria rising. The Federalists in Congress had passed the Alien and Sedition Acts aimed at stopping radical French influence in the United States and limiting the influence of foreign-born people who were critical of Adams' policies. The acts also gave the president the right to expel or imprison any alien who was dangerous or suspect, giving wide latitude to the government. Damn. Looky, y'all. That's kind of feeling like, I don't know, today. The laws also authorize fines and prison terms for anyone who wrote or distributed any false, scandalous, and malicious writings against the government with the goal of defaming U.S. officials or bringing them into contempt or disrepute. Jefferson, by the way, opposed all this. Different factions were increasingly at each other's throats. Adams' policies and his abrasive personality often at the center of the disputes. God, Lee, I've heard similar accusations. Yeah, in January of 1798, tempers got so inflamed that Federalist Representative Roger Griswold, he was from Connecticut, actually engaged in a fist fight on the House floor with fellow Representative Governor Matthew Lyon. The Lyon was from Vermont, and he was a vehement critic of Adams, as Griswold questioned Lyon's military record. He flailed at his adversary with a cane. Lyon counterattacked with fire tongs. I'm talking North Korean Parliament, y'all. Jefferson's act wasn't easy, and the ascent in the office was also very rocky. Building on the support of a Virginia-New York alliance of anti-Federalists, Jefferson defeated Adams in a highly negative campaign on all sides, but tied with Aaron Burr at 73 electoral votes apiece. Adams had 65. Yeah, so he was chosen president of the House of Representatives after 36 ballots. 10 states voted for Jefferson, 4 for Burr. Because you got to bear in mind, obviously we did not have 57 states, Mr. Obama. Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, had steeped in the nationalist ideals of the Enlightenment, now had the chance to put his philosophy into action. He continued to express his trust with well-informed citizens, albeit all of them to govern themselves through a majority rule over a few landed aristocrats. He also opposed specialized federal aid as anti-democratic. But Jefferson turned out to be more of a, moderate than his critics had expected. His tone also very oftentimes being very conciliatory. In his inaugural address, he said, "We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. We quickly decided to adopt some Federalist policies and some Republican ideas." He's not talking about Republican Party. The Republican Party did not come into being until 1854. He's talking about ideas of the Republican general. He maintained a middle course between the ideas of both parties. He was pragmatic, according to Stephen Laurent, who was a historian abandoning theories when they were in the way. The Alien and Sedition Acts were not renewed. Unpopular taxes were repealed, rolling back major Federalist initiatives that had embittered much of the country as well. Jefferson also calmed war zealots who wanted to confront France yet again, and this enabled him to limit expenditures for the military. In 1802, he acquired the vast majority of Louisiana from France, and on his accomplishments go. But it is interesting to note that that particular election did occur on this particular date, the 3rd of December in the year of 1800. And so it is also interesting to realize that much of what is going on in this country today indeed has its roots in the past. And what we just did there for the last few moments, last 10 minutes or so, is give you an idea of some of the things that we are going to be covering and caring about in future editions of The Unknown America, the podcast. Now, the schedule for the podcast on that, as well as situational security, has not yet been announced. It is coming. These two other entities, these two other broadcasts, will be, for all intent and purposes, break-free. They will run for approximately 60 minutes. We'll get some guests in here as well to help us sort out some of the, well, not just the history, but obviously as far as the situational security is concerned, that's going to be all experts, because I am not an expert in anything as it relates to your personal security. All I know is I'm packing a heater, and I intend to continue packing a heater. We come back on the other side. We're going to talk about the First Step Act. This is something the president is considering, in addition to the fact that we have learned that the Russians are deploying S-400 surface-to-air missile batteries in Crimea in brand new satellite images. I'm going to spare you the comparison between this and the missiles of October under the Kennedy administration. But yet again, for the second time this morning, we realize that many of the things that are going on in the world around us, in fact, are embedded, no pun intended, in the history of this nation. So, quick break, coming right back. You're listening to, I guess it's, and then there's that with Michael Hart right here on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
Is your home's crawl space making your... Let Alabama Water Management inspect your crawl space today. A wet, moldy crawl space can cause serious foundation problems. They are breeding grounds for disgusting odors, polluted air, potentially harmful allergens, and volatile organic compounds that can actually make breathing difficult and the air in your home very unhealthy. Don't take chances with your family's health. If your home has a crawl space, call Alabama Water Management today for a no-cost, no-obligation crawl space inspection.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com.
It's the Michael Hart Show.
Come again?
The Michael Hart Show.
You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please.
A liberal dose of conservatism.
How'd you do that? I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Hey, welcome back. You're listening to the, and then there's that. I'm going to get used to saying that. And then there's that with Michael Hart right here on the Hart of America Network. And we're calling it the Hart of America Network because we have got multiple different streams that we are going to be adding to the broadcast. Would you like to play along? Well, give us a call, 929-477-3761. And if you are a business owner, and I'm going to tell you straight up, it's going to best serve and benefit those of you that do business online, because we are currently getting people that are tuning in from other parts of the globe. Great Britain made the list, Sweden, seen 1 or 2 listeners coming in from Georgia, and I don't mean the state. The United Arab Emirates, Canada made the list, Costa Rica, and there is just a whole host. You can go over to the Michael Hart or Facebook. If you click on the Patreon link, you can become a patron, but you can also find out more about the various business advertiser tiers where you can throw your message out. And by the way, unlike in the olden days, when you have the terrestrial signal, whenever we talk about your business on this particular program, that discussion gets archived. So it's not like people hear it and then all of a sudden it goes away after the ad or the sponsorship plays. It's out there permanently. That's a heck of a deal for a couple, $3 per mention on a international web broadcast. You want more information? Drop me an email, Michael at Michael@HartofAmerica.net, Michael at HartofAmerica.net, or you can get more information by simply clicking on the Patreon link. It'll take you over to the Patreon page and show you the various ways you can support the program while supporting your business. Satellite images shot yesterday show a newly deployed Russian S-400 surface-to-air missile battery in an air base in Crimea. The intelligence report by ImageSat International indicates that the infrastructure for the S-400 battery was prepared in recent months, a long time before last weekend's naval encounters that sparked new tension between Russia and Ukraine. The images show a bare ground in April of 2018 and construction by November 10th, 2 weeks before the recent escalation. The images captured Sunday have confirmed the deployment. The 8 launchers of the S-400 battery are divided into 4, which are located in the southwest area of the air base, as well as 2 radar systems and several trucks nearby. One of them is suspected to be carrying the S-400 missiles. Now, these are not missiles which are going to be pointed towards the United States. They only have a range of about 250 miles. They can climb to an altitude of about 19 miles, and it's intended to bring down a variety of aerial threats from aircraft to cruise and ballistic missiles. This happens to be in response to some of the tensions between the Russians and the Ukrainians. The images also show a bare ground followed by construction, as well as a statement that was released by the ministry, the defense ministry, day after the warship seized multiple Ukrainian naval vessels, escalating the conflict with Ukraine over the Russian land that was annexed in 2014. So essentially what we have in Crimea is, going back to April, it looks like a little bit of heavy-duty landscaping going on. Then, come yesterday, you can see in the aerial footage that the areas that have been cleared out previously are very clearly showing that they have been built out. Again, I don't want to go too deep into the missiles of October crisis going back to the 1960s between Khrushchev and Kennedy. But there is some similarities there, because Khrushchev was trying to make the case that the missiles that were placed on the island of Cuba were there for Russians' defense protection, as well as the protection of Cuba, which Kennedy knew was a load of crap because there was no real assets on Cuba for the Russians to protect. It was obviously done as an intimidation against the United States. Now, in this particular case, that is not exactly the same thing, but it is interesting to note that yet again, clandestinely, the Russians are building out missile defense capabilities in other parts of the world. When you consider the fact that the people most likely to come to the rescue of the Ukrainians would either be the United States or a coalition of the willing, as previous President Bush has often called it. Either way, we're in the middle of it. So although the missiles, the defense bases are in fact in Russia, in Crimea, that's for us. We are going to continue to keep an eye on this situation. This is going to be a rather slow-moving set of events that's going to be very, very hard to completely dissect without the full benefit of all the information that we can get our hands on. But tensions do seem to be escalating. This is one of the reasons why a meeting, for example, for the G20 with Trump and Putin would have been necessary. But I digress. Phone lines are open, 929-477-3761, 477-3761. Also, and we're going to probably break this down a little bit more when we come back on the other side. Don't go anywhere because we're not leaving you yet. But we're going to talk a bit about this First Step Act. Years and years ago, I mean, way back in the day, even before I had a seminar business where I taught business owners the art of working with the media, how the media gets their guests, their interviews, their subject matter, is it can be kind of cloak and dagger. And a lot of people don't realize that businesses have a wonderful opportunity to grow their business, or for that matter, any organization, by getting the support of people in the press. Years ago, I had a seminar company that taught business owners and organizations and association leadership how the media works, how people in the press find guests, how to release press releases, when to release them, why to release them, where to release them, how to follow up, et cetera, et cetera. The idea was to get free publicity to promote any product, service, company, or cause. But before I got into the seminar business, when I started learning how to speak, I joined an organization that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with called Toastmasters International. And I learned a lot about speaking. I was very, very honored back in the day to be the very first person from the state of Alabama to be invited to speak at the International Convention of Toastmasters International. And I not only was invited once, I was invited 3 different times. And there have been 5 or 6 or 7 different presidents that have spoken there as well. So it was quite an honor for me, and I was delighted to have that opportunity. In my Toastmasters career, I was also the state public relations director, etc. But one of the things that I also did while being at Toastmasters was I would go into, and this was a personal mission of my own, frankly, it's one that I'd like to get into again. Time has just been a little bit on the prohibiting side. But one of the things that I would do is I would speak inside of the prisons in the state of Alabama. Sometimes I'd be in front of lifers. Over the years, I developed pen pal relationships with some of these guys. It is amazing how many people go to prison for rape and murder and other just horrific crimes and find the Lord. It's one of the reasons why, at least in the state of Alabama, you have Christian dormitories. But one of the things that I also learned in my tenure as a prison consultant, and by the way, just so you know, I wasn't teaching them motivational skills. I wasn't teaching them, business building or marketing skills. I was basically going in there and saying, look, your life has value still. Your life has worth. And I believe that. I believe that all souls are redeemable. And, that's just it's part of my faith. So I would go in and say, look, you might have committed these heinous acts, but at the end of the day, you still have an opportunity to serve your fellow man and to be redeemed in the blood of Christ. And that was pretty much the extent of where I was going. But I was invited one time to go and speak to a place in Clio, Alabama. Some people might call it Clio. This is the actual birth town of former Alabama Governor George Wallace. In this particular little town is a prison by the name of Easterling. And I was invited to go to Easterling and do the graduation speech, if you will, of people that had been in a drug rehabilitation program within the prison. The moms and the dads and the brothers and the sisters were all invited. And they were going to bring the prisoners out, and I would do the congratulations for being clean speech, etc. I figured, I don't know, 15, 20 guys? There must have been 100 graduates and their families. It was quite the to-do. It struck me, and you've got to remember, this is every bit of 25 years ago. There were a lot of people in this prison that were doing time, and I mean years of time, for drug-related offenses such as the possession of marijuana, maybe cocaine. You can still get Valiums on the street at that point in time. I realized that drug distribution is, in fact, something that needs to be dealt with, curtailed, eliminated. But there was a lot of lives in that room that day that I saw firsthand, and one of them I even knew. People that were doing time, hard time in a prison for all intent and purposes was a relatively minor offense. We're not talking about people that got jacked up and killed somebody in a DUI accident. We're talking about somebody that got caught. And I'm going to tell you straight up, for those of you that are brand new listeners to this program, oh, but for the grace of God, I didn't get caught, because there was nobody, and I mean nobody, in that graduating class that day that had not done something that I myself had done on numerous occasions. And it really made me start to think and wonder about the way we are dealing with our judicial system in this country, particularly as it relates primarily to the lower end or the drug offenses. Do not doubt me for one moment, folks. Nobody could be stronger on law enforcement or more supportive of our laws in this country than yours truly. But there definitely does seem to be somewhat of a judicial balance here that is way out of whack. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to take a quick peer back into the administration of Bill Clinton, as well as the new idea of revising the way these prisoners are sentenced in the future. It's called the First Step Act. A lot of Democrats are behind it. A lot of Republicans are behind it as well. And when we return, we'll give you a little bit of an idea of just what that's all about on this edition of And Then There's That with Michael Hart right here on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. Fan of the Michael Hart Show and are enjoying the daily commentary, interviews, and audio shorts, then please consider supporting the program financially. Creating a daily talk program takes a great deal of time and money. Although corporate sponsors are always welcome, the real support comes from people like you, the regular listeners. So if you support the Christian conservative message and values we share on this program and would like to help, please go to our website, michaelhartshow.com, and click on the orange Patreon button at the top of the page. For less than $7 a month, you can help us keep going while we spread our faith-based conservative views worldwide. So if you support our views, please consider supporting the program. Just go to www.michaelhartshow.com and click on the orange Patreon button, and thanks for your support and for listening.
None shall pass.
What?
None shall pass.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
I move for
The Michael Hart Show.
You make me sad.
At this First Step Act. All right, right now we have a crime bill that Senator Cory Booker is begging for people to get on board with. And when we look at mass incarcerations in this country, We have gone from 500,000 in 1980 to almost 2.5 million people now. There are citizens, Americans, who are locked up right now. But it's also important to point out that 97% of the people in jail, 97%, according to some estimates, of the 2.2 million, took a plea deal because they did not have adequate representation. Now, this is primarily, according to research, it's a group from the 1990s. Hundreds of people were, in fact, destroyed through Bill Clinton's crime bill, and it is not being discussed, and it should be. We're talking about the First Step Act, which is a historic reform of the criminal justice system that President Trump and his team have worked hard to negotiate. Now, here is what Trump said going back to November 14th. Quote, "Today I'm thrilled to announce my support for this bipartisan bill that would make our community safer and give former inmates a second chance at life after they have served their time." Of course, he had to finish up with "so important." He's right, and this is it's a populist issue. And it should be discussed as much as immigration or trade. Now, this is one of these things, one of these stories that for whatever the reason, it hasn't fallen off the radar. It never really made it onto the radar. And Cory Booker is pushing it as much as he can. I am not a Booker fan. I mean, I've made that pretty clear. But when you're right, you're right. Over the last several years, I have been very vocal about the fact that I find it heartbreaking that we're worried about bringing people into this country, giving them insurance, health care, etc., while at the same time we have families and a lot of veterans sleeping under a bridge. We seem to be so unbelievably concerned with the plight of people outside of the United States that we neglect those that are here already, that are citizens. And I guess we can liken it, to those, that family dynamic even. Maybe you have a husband or a wife or a brother or sister, whatever the case may be, that treats their family members like complete utter garbage. But at the same time, everybody loves them. They're the life of the party. You know the type. You know the type of family. Everybody loves Daddy. He's always smiling, always cutting jokes, and then he goes home and hits his wife or beats his children. Very frequently in our relationships, and I'm not a psychologist, but very frequently, we treat those that are closest to us with the most contempt, while simultaneously being generous and loving for those that we barely know. Maybe it's a matter of first impressions. I don't know. But I do find it interesting that we work so hard in this country to help others before we help our own people that are suffering. This particular act helps to deal with that. He went on to say, "Today I'm thrilled to announce my support of this bipartisan bill that will make our community safer and give former inmates a second chance at life after they have served their time." Again, so important. Bill Clinton's 1994 crime bill ended up incarcerating millions of working Americans. far too many of them African American, and for far too long, hurting their ability to work and earn a living, contributing to family breakdowns and helping tear apart what Steve Hilton penned as the social fabric in our communities. I don't know. I've not read the bill itself. I don't know if it's a perfect piece of legislation, but I do know this. There are far too many men and women languishing in our prisons across this country for offenses no greater than getting stoned and getting caught. And far too many times, if you're inside the prison, and I have been there, inside the prisons, you are talking about a lot of African American men. Now, I didn't pull the research down on the 97%, but if in fact 97% of people are there because they took a plea deal and without proper representation or adequate representation, ooh, that is hardcore. A few folks calling into the program want to share their thoughts on it. I believe this person's name is Pianki, so I'm going to bring Pianki in. Hey, Pianki, did I get the name right?
Yeah, you got it right, Mark. And by the way, I'm African-American who supported and voted for Donald Trump. And do I ever get ridiculed, harassed, and called names? But let me ask you a question on this bill. And, of course, you made mention of people getting high or stoned. You know, that's okay. But what if one of these convicted criminals that's in prison have actually done a grievous act against a United States citizen? And now you have, may be contained in this bill also provisions to let them out early. Should not the victims or the victim's family be consulted? And one other question. We're talking about expunging or removing the felon that's associated with them. But no one gave Judge Kavanaugh that option, Roy Moore, for something that they done decades earlier. So when do the issue of tit for tat comes into play? That's two things that always bother me.
You know, the victim's right argument, I agree with you on. Because, you know, I am very pro law enforcement, and ironically enough, Bianchi, you know, you're talking to a program that has interviewed Roy Moore on numerous occasions. I know the judge because we're from Alabama, and there's a lot. See, the thing is, for me, with the First Step Act, I think the entire process needs to be revised and driven back towards the tenets of the Constitution. Because the victims' families do indeed have rights, but then again, the unbridled strategy of leveling accusations vis-a-vis Kavanaugh and or Roy Moore, there needs to be a backlash about that as well. Because now in the state of Alabama, it's looking as though many of his accusers might not have been as truthful as they were. So what kind of judicial culpability are we talking about here in that regard as well? So I think the First Step Act is just that, the first step, because I think both of your points are valid.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike, because when I've asked people that same question, they want to push back on it. Because when you let out somebody early, that is a slap in the face because the victims never thought that they got enough time for what the victims had to pay for.
Well, I think one of the things that happens under this act, it gives judges a little bit more authority, because the way I'm coming from this as is if somebody goes out and gets stoned and gets caught, holding marijuana or some Valiums or Coke or whatever, to me, that's a victimless crime. Now, if you're talking about somebody that's committed a crime against another human being, that's a whole different argument. And I've got
that's
no
what
problem.
I'm talking about. Yes,
okay?
sir. That's
I've got no problem with the families, no problem with the families being consulted on that whatsoever.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike.
Hey, buddy, before you go, where are you calling us from?
Midwest, red state of Missouri.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Got friends out of Missouri, all over St. Louis, as a matter of fact. Pianki, appreciate the call so very much. It was very good, but please call us back.
Sure, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, a lot of folks don't know, but yeah, I don't know what it is about the state of Missouri, but they have cranked out some conservative talkers over the years. A lot of folks don't realize that Dr. Gina Loudon's from Missouri, the Black Sphere, Kevin Jackson's from Missouri, Dana Lash is from Missouri. It's crazy stuff out there. Let's go ahead and take a real quick break. But, Yankee brought up some points, and I think it's really worth discussing because for me this bill goes beyond just the sentencing phase of somebody that might have been engaged in a victimless crime. What about, the paroling or the pardoning or whatever the case may be of crimes where there have been a victim? What role should the victim's family play? What role, what testimony should they be allowed? How much weight should it carry? Because right now, one of the problems I'm seeing in this country today, and I'm hoping I'm going to say this the right way, I'm seeing a judge problem. Now, we want to give judges the autonomy to make decisions without having forced or preordained sentencing. But at the same time, we are seeing judges in this country that we don't want legislating from the bench. And we are talking, in the case of this particular act, this bill that's being bantered back and forth, the lower courts. We're not talking about the district level or higher. But it does seem that we have this, I don't even know how to phrase it, but just the fact we got a lot of judges out there that seem to be going their own way and making decisions that fall far outside the auspices of what their particular role should be. Now, this act does allow judges the ability to not have to incarcerate somebody for 10 years or 7 years or whatever it is over a minor drug offense. But if Hilton is correct, and I have no reason to doubt that he is, 97% of the people in prison today were there off a plea deal because they didn't have proper representation. I'm sorry, folks. That is a tragedy, in my opinion, of major league proportions. Stick around. We're coming right back. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
Is your home's crawl space making your... Let Alabama Water Management inspect your crawl space today. A wet, moldy crawl space can cause serious foundation problems. They are breeding grounds for disgusting odors, polluted air, potentially harmful allergens, and volatile organic compounds that can actually make breathing difficult and the air in your home very unhealthy. Don't take chances with your family's health. If your home has a crawl space, call Alabama Water Management today for a no-cost, no-obligation crawl space inspection.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at alah2o.com.
None shall pass.
What?
None shall pass.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
I move for...
The Michael Hart Show.
You make me stand.
line for all the upcoming different types of products. Hart of America, HART, Hart of America.net, the situational security program going to be released. Don't know that we'll get around to it by this upcoming week, this upcoming Friday, but we are certainly going to try. Takes a little bit more time to cobble that thing together simply because there's a lot of people that have to be involved, and we want to make absolutely certain we're getting the best information for you. But we also have the Unknown America, which is going to be released probably sometime this week as well. Bill Clinton's 1994 crime bill ended up incarcerating millions of working Americans, far too many of them, again, African Americans, and for far too long. Turning that around is going to be an accomplishment. Interestingly enough, leaders from both sides of the aisle are on board. You've got Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee, who said this bill would deal with that. It would tell judges they've got discretion to actually be judges. It will make life better for millions of Americans who, one way or another, are affected by our federal criminal justice system. You've got South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. What we're talking about is basically creating a new sentencing system that will give African-American male and Hispanic male detainees a chance to get out of jail. It's the most important bipartisan piece of legislation in the Congress today. Now, let me stop right there and make sure that we're very clear about this. We are not talking about lessening these punishments after these crimes have been committed. We're not talking about early release. We're talking about not incarcerating people for basically nonviolent crimes for an extended period of time. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about, and let me go ahead and get myself in some hot water. There is a woman that was convicted of voter fraud. This was a couple of years ago. She didn't go all Brenda Snipes. She was somebody that was basically stuffing the ballot box. And obviously that's a federal crime. And I want to say she voted like 4 or 5 times. Don't have the story up in front of me directly. But this woman's doing 10 years. I understand the argument of, well, you got to send the message. But 10 years. We're not talking about Brenda Snipes, who is going to walk away with $130,000 a year in pensions, according to some reports. We're talking about a woman that's going to get a decade in prison or doing a decade in prison for stuffing a couple extra ballots in the box. Does that feel just a little unjust? Because it does to me. These are the kind of things that we're talking about. Or somebody that gets caught, I don't know, taking something across state lines. I'm not talking about violent crime here, folks. If a crime is committed, a crime is committed. But we do know that an awful lot of people in our prisons are there because they do not have the economic wherewithal to bail out or hire the right attorneys. In addition to Lindsey Graham and Mike Lee, you've got Democrats like Dick Durbin and the aforementioned Cory Booker. I'm also not a Van Jones fan, but he came out in praise of the president, saying, on this one, I'll give him a salute and applause. We've got to come together to help the people at the bottom. If you can't put politics aside to help people who are suffering and struggling in prison, when there's a shot to do something on a bipartisan basis, then I think we've taken politics too far. Now, you'd think with all the support that this bill would easily pass Congress, and that's what the bill's sponsor, who happens to be Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, is hoping. He tweeted, deal maker at Real Donald Trump can get a big bipartisan deal done this year on criminal justice reform. Plenty of time to pass the First Step Act in December. Will GOP senators and Leader McConnell stand and press Trump's way, he's abbreviating, of achieving major bipartisan victory or join in historic popular reform. And there's the problem. There's one hitch in all this, Mitch. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell seems to think that his only job in life is confirming judges, and of course that's vital. But so is President Trump's agenda, and it would help if Republican Majority Leader could actually help pass it. But Mitch McConnell is currently blocking it. He said he won't bring the First Step Act to a vote because, well, it's not exactly clear. He went on to say, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but the first step is to finalize what proponents are actually for. There have been a lot of different versions floating around, and then we'll whip it up and see where the vote count is. Another objector is outgoing Tennessee Republican Senator Bob Corker. He said, quote, a lot of people like me are still trying to understand what it does. And he said there had only been a higher level of discussion whether we should attempt to do it. Bottom line here is, regardless of what form, and by the way, almost every piece of legislation that's ever offered up, every bill that's ever offered up, typically has to be revised at some point in time, if not once, numerous times, because typically they are often fraught with inaccuracies and shortcomings. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that there needs to be something done with the sentencing process in this country, because you've got 2.2 million Americans currently in federal custody right now. And some estimates, according to Mr. Hilton, 97% of them are there because they did not have the ability to hire proper representation. I'm sorry, folks, that is a major, major problem. So anyway, there's going to be a lot of debate between the White House, between Trump, and, of course, between, Mr. McConnell. Because the debate rages on. They don't know what's in it. I guess you have to vote on it before you get to read it, or something Pelosi like that. Blocking this bill would also leave more people in jail. That is one comment. Now, who would be most in favor of that? Well, the prison industry, for one. And guess who's received more money from private prison companies than any other member of the Senate? That's right, Bob Corker. And Mitch McConnell's opposition to the bill, which has mystified many people, makes a little more sense when you discover that he has received, wait for it, over $500,000 from private prison companies and their financial interest over the years. Yep. So those that are standing in opposition to the prison bill are the very ones that have received the most money from the prison industry. And yet again, follow the money. But indeed, it is time to open this debate to make absolutely certain that all Americans realize that we have got a lot of folks languishing away in our prison systems, and all too frequently they are there because of poor representation and or the color of their skin. Quick break, coming right back. You're listening to And Then There's That with Michael Hart and the Hart of America. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone can tell you the news.
We welcome Diamond and Silk.
Mark Zuckerberg will end up and it's going to be a face without the book.
Book without the face.
Hey, Megan, how are you?
Now they're chipping away at the normalization of pedophilia, and the left is embracing this type of behavior.
We welcome Dinesh D'Souza.
I know I ticked him off. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Hey, welcome back. You're listening to, and then there's that. We've renamed this program. We're constantly, changing stuff on y'all, but we got a lot of stuff going on, and that's why I want you to check us out over at Hart, H-A-R-T, heartofamerica.net. We are building out multiple different podcasts and live broadcast streams because we want to cover not just the news of the day or the news of the week, but also on the unknown America side. Today, 1800s, the presidential election of 1800. On December 3rd of 1800, we would have seen what amounted to the birth of the political party system in this country. Although you had different viewpoints at that time, they were pretty fluid in the way they operated with one another until this particular day in history. And then also we're going to be doing the Situational Security Summit. Is going to be an ongoing thing. And the inspiration for this was something we did in Birmingham some years ago. Certainly was not my idea, but something that people have been asking about and clamoring for the longest period of time. So we decided to just kind of take it on the road, so to speak. And the reason we're doing that is there's a lot of things going on in the world around us. And what sparked this was the ongoing investigation in Alabama about the mall shooting. And let me just speak to this for just a moment. Folks, social media is just not your friend. Ever since the death shooting by the Hoover Police Department in Birmingham, people are getting threats. There's protests. There's talks of boycotts. People have lost their jobs over comments made online. I got tagged in a Facebook post that has, for all intent and purposes, gone viral. I haven't even engaged in this particular debate, but somebody was obviously trying to get my attention. We don't even have all the facts. We don't even have all the details. And people are so quick in this country to point fingers, to level accusations, and to create otherwise a measure of mayhem without having all of the information necessary to make a decision. The Situational Security Summit, or at least the show, or whatever we choose to call it, I think we're going to call it SICSAC, that'll probably be the hashtag as well, is a response to all the craziness that is going on in the world around us today. I've been a long-time advocate for my right to conceal a weapon and to carry that weapon wherever I may go. Couldn't care less if you carry one. But the fact of the matter is that there is a lot of really whack stuff going on in the world around us today. But more importantly, much of it being fueled by social media. One thing that's very hard to deliver in the spoken word or the short form spoken words of a tweet or a Facebook post or whatever is context. And I want to caution people to back up, walk away, if you will. Start your own radio program. You can throw one out there a month and it doesn't cost hardly anything to do that. What we're doing is a little bit different. But the point I'm making is if you have something that you want to express, then express it in a manner that you can deliver context. Because with almost every passing day, I'm seeing more and more people get loonier and loonier and loonier over things that they cannot control, that they don't know anything about, and they don't even know who they're speaking to. So, for that reason, primarily, we are going to introduce the Situational Security Summit. I am not suggesting that we're doing this in response to liberals or conservatives. We're going to be talking about keeping your kids safe online. We're going to be talking about what to do in an active shooter situation, which we did this past week. We're going to be talking about ways to handle yourself if you are carrying a weapon. We're going to be talking about ways to survive if your car goes off a cliff. The whole idea is your situation, how to be secure in your situation. We're excited about that, and that's why we're asking you to run over to heartofamerica.net and check that out, as well as the upcoming The Unknown America series, because that's exactly what we're going to do. And the reason I'm going to do that is as I continue to write book number 2 and the children's version of the book, I am absolutely overwhelmed with information, because I'm going to tell y'all something. I'm being dead serious about this. Everything you know about this country is wrong. Now, I mean, there's kernels of truth, but I'm talking about the way we've come to where we've come. So many of the stories that have been embellished or revised. The whole thing with, the Electoral College. The Democrats are trying to do away with the Electoral College. They don't realize that it was established that way for a reason. But not just the deep, heavy political stuff, but just some of the just cultural anomalies that we think or we believe or we did. Because you know something, and I think I'm going to be real right about this. 100 years, no, not even 50 years from now, maybe even 10, probably just the next generation. They are going to look back on this generation, my kids' generation, and probably the one that's going to follow them. I'll go grandfather, kids, and then their kid, my grandchildren who aren't born yet. Never mind. Future generations are going to look back on this period in time and think we were completely whack for throwing our stuff out on the internet. I don't mean buying things on Amazon. I'm talking about the social media stuff. What do you think the framers would say about Donald Trump and his tweets? I mean, do we realize that from a constitutional perspective, there were debates that went on for days on a single issue? It's just one of these things that popped into my head and because I'm starting to realize that America, as a country, as a whole, is acting in many respects like a bratty child. Across the land, we seem to be throwing tantrum after tantrum after tantrum. And there are a lot of folks in this country that are on the receiving end of that consternation and that angst. These are some of the conversations that we need to be having in this country. We will be doing that in future editions of this program. George H.W. Bush is going to lie in state at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda this week. Congressional leaders announced Saturday a move that has become customary to honor the passing of former presidents. Now, obviously, Bush served as the 41st president between 1989 and 93, died shortly after 10 p.m. Friday, about 8 months after Barb. He is survived, obviously, by George Bush, Jeb Bush. He also has 17 grandchildren. Congressional leaders announced the arrival ceremony for Bush will be today at 5 p.m. Eastern. The public will be invited to pay their respects from 7:30 p.m. tonight until 7 a.m. Wednesday. Yes, it's an all-nighter. The statement said the Bush family will provide additional details regarding arrangements beyond the ceremony, which is held at the Capitol. Now, when someone lies in state in the Capitol Rotunda, the casket is placed in the center of the room. The wooden platform was the same one used for Lincoln's funeral in 1865. The casket is draped with an American flag, and an honor guard stands vigil around the clock. The rotunda is usually permitted people in it to file past the casket after formal and family ceremonies. The last president to lie in state was President Gerald Ford, the only president and vice president that ascended to both of those offices without being elected. This was in late 2006. President Ronald Reagan lay in state in June of 2004. However, the last two people to lie in state were not presidents. They were Senator Daniel Inouye of Hawaii, and that was in 2012, and Senator John McCain from Arizona, of course, this year. Billy Graham did not lie in state earlier this year. He lay in honor, one step down from lying in state, although that ceremony looks very similar. President Nixon did not lie in state in 1994, as his family thought visitors to the Capitol might not be respectful. Certainly not. The White House said Saturday that President Trump and the First Lady will attend Bush's funeral at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., which is an absolutely gorgeous place. I want to say that I believe it's Woodrow Wilson who is actually interred inside the National Cathedral. President Trump has also designated the 5th, which will be Wednesday, as a national day of mourning. Meanwhile, plans for a state funeral were already underway, according to the Washington Post, with events expected in Texas as well as Washington. According to Major General Michael Hart of the Joint Force Headquarters National Capital Region, said in a statement, "We, the men and women of the Department of Defense, are honored and proud to support the Bush family and will do so with the utmost respect." This, stand with a quote, "This state funeral is a culmination of years of planning and rehearsal to ensure the support the military renders less than a first-class tribute." So the president will begin lying in state later today. Expect, if you are a news junkie, Fox, CNN, that's going to be it, gang. That is the story of the week. And, respectfully speaking, it should be. Because, at the end of the day, and I've said this so many times before, you're not just honoring the man, you're paying homage to the office. And it's very important that Americans realize the importance of that. Bush was a mediocre president. His service to this nation, it's beyond contestation. I mean, he served his entire life. But he was mediocre as a president. But the office of president always needs to be honored and cherished by all Americans. You're going to get a healthy dose of it throughout the course of today, tomorrow, until the actual burial takes place, the actual ceremony itself takes place. This is what's going to be on the agenda pretty much all week long. And watch, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of inside baseball here that you probably already know. But keep an eye on the way the media treats this. Because almost anything short of a nuclear confrontation is not going to get the press off this. They are in the business of not just reporting on events, but turning them into complete, unadulterated circuses. And that's exactly what's going to happen with the funeral for George Bush. It would not surprise me in the least. I have no idea if this is even being talked about, but there are so many cable outlets out there, and a lot of these networks like ESPN, ESPN 42 Alternative, it wouldn't surprise me if C-SPAN or somebody, even a Fox News, picked up a live feed, maybe even online, kind of like we were watching that draft have labor pains. You watch if they don't put up a continual stream of him lying in state. And what's even scarier is there are people that are going to sit there and watch it. Kind of like the giraffe. I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, he will be lying in state for about the next 48 hours or so. That's pretty much all the news that's going on around the nation today. Please check us out again at heartofamerica.net, heartofamerica.net. If you're looking for a great Christmas present this year, go check out The Unknown America. Several people have emailed me over the course of the last several days asking about copies of the book. If you go to theunknownamerica.com, all one word, just theunknownamerica.com, discounted there. We took off the shipping charges, as well as you'll get a copy of the Constitution, and they will come autographed with a little inscription that I put in each one of them. So we would be more than honored if you would check that out. And again, the children's version is in the works, as well as a board game that'll probably be released. It won't be released in time for Christmas. There's just an awful lot that goes into this, a lot of research that goes into it as well. And for the month of December, we have also put up a 5-book discount where you can pick up multiple copies of the book. I think 5 of them is like $60. Tax tag title, walking out the door. It's a great. You can never do better than giving the gift of knowledge. Well, money, but secondly, well, maybe. Either way, you'll decide. But go check it out, theunknownamerica.com, theunknownamerica.com. Stick around, keep an eye on the website. A lot coming up, a lot of announcements that are coming up as well. We're going to bug out of here a little bit early today. We've hit on pretty much all the salient points. We appreciate the callers. Had one or two coming in from other parts of the country, and you guys have been absolutely stellar in the support of the program. Again, if you'd like more information to grow or support the program through supporting your business and growing your company, we'd love to hear from you. Just drop me an email at michael@heartofamerica.net. That's michael@heartofamerica.net. We would love to hear from you and work with you in any way, shape, or form. Gonna bug out of here a little bit early today. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 8. You've been listening to the new show's name. And then there's that with Michael Hart. on the Hart of America Talk Radio Network. Back with you tomorrow at 8.